Primal.
Hey everybody, it's time for another Ask Primal, and this video is totally not an excuse just to use my new webcam. I swear. As far as the V20 books go, I really like that they're coming out with them, and I like the way that they're presented. They aren't doing the thing they used to do where they try to force the world onto you. And that's really good, because it used to be whenever something new came out, it was White Wolf coming around to fuck with your game and tell you how you're doing it wrong, and all these other sorts of things, especially when the 3rd edition was coming out. But I like how they've come out with a whole bunch of different versions. They've included everything in one volume, which I don't think they've ever done. And as far as the new releases go, I'm really looking forward to what they're going to do. And I hope they don't screw it up. I really do hope they do Werewolf and Mage, and I guess the other ones you can take or leave. I know some people would kill for a Changeling. But if they did the big 3, Mage, Werewolf, in addition to Vampire, I hope they don't just keep it to the Vampire stuff and the Vampire Companion, because there's a whole big world out there that informs the Vampire universe that I'd like to see updated and consolidated and made available online. So I'm for it generally. Specifically, I like what they've done so far, and I'm interested in what they do next. The question you ask is a really difficult one to answer, because it's a more general problem with how humans work, how we deal with each other. The fact that when you come into a new game, you're coming into a situation where people already know each other. And like any other situation in which you're dealing with a bunch of set friendships, it can feel very hard to break into, especially when you're dealing with kind of a closed environment. To top it all off, unlike most situations in which you're encountering a brand new group of people, it's not like someone introduced you to anything. It's not like you're being brought to a new club by a friend. You're going in cold turkey. Imagine walking into a room full of people you don't even know, and then trying to do something with them that's explicitly social. It's tough, I understand. Of course, you don't need me to tell you this if you're a new player. You already know this, but I'm kind of pointing it out so other people can sympathize. What makes it an extra tough question is it kind of relies on the people around you. So I'm going to divide this up into 2 parts. 1, how you should act as a new player, and 2, how you should act toward new players. So for the first half, new players pay attention, as well as you veterans. For the second half, all you veterans pay attention, but also you new people. Rule number 1, don't give up. Rome wasn't built in the day, and neither was your character's reputation. Look, you gotta keep at this. You've been here for a day. There's some people who've been here for 7 years. Well, one person. Dan. So like any group of people that have been around each other for a while and you're the new entrant, you're going to have to spend a little time making friends. Now, there are some bad ways of making friends. In general, the worst ways could be called attention-seeking behavior. Either intentionally getting involved in far too much drama, breeding interpersonal drama of various sorts, and or going the flirtatious romance route. Bad way of making friends. It decreases you in the eyes of the other players, it gives you a reputation, and generally it's annoying for reasons that should be obvious to just about everyone. Other bad ideas for characters include the damsel in distress, the dark brooding stranger, and just about anyone who doesn't have a good engaging personality and hook. So the damsel in distress gets old really quickly, and people get tired of the damsel being distressed because it becomes
every single night the same arrangement. I go out and fight the fight.
Yeah, something like that. And if you think that's bad, the silent loner type is even worse. I mean, consider this for a second.
That man in the corner. Who is he?
He's one of them rangers. Dangerous folk they are, wandering in the wilds. What his right name is, I've never heard, but round here, he's known as Strider.
That's what most people expect to happen when they make the dangerous loner character, the dark brooding figure that sits on the side of the bar. The problem is there is no bartender. No one knows you for shit. You're boring, you're not doing anything, and you're not the last king of men. You're a neonate. So no one's going to be interested in that. So don't do it. The only reason Strider was able to do it is he kind of had the SDs helping him out. An unreasonable amount by making them the last of the true men. So unless the staff has personally authorized your character to be the last of the Aryan supermen and destined to save all the races and free men of Middle-earth, don't make that character. Okay, Matt, so these are all the characters you're not supposed to make, and these are all the behaviors you're not supposed to exhibit. So let's get to the point where you're not making any of the failed character types. You're not having any of the bad behaviors. So how do I get in? Well, there's a couple ways. One, approach people. Introduce yourself. Get involved. But the best way to do it is to get involved with clan politics. There's always a need to have lackeys. Approach your elders. Approach your primogen. Approach your whip. Ask about the political situation. That is the most direct way you can get involved with the plot. And one of the best ways to get involved with the plot politically, and to get understand, is to sell out. You don't have to sell out as in just become somebody's bitch, but you need to become worth something to somebody. You need to say to the elder or the primogen, how can I help? What can I do for you? Because that gives them an incentive to deal with you and give you things to do. So sell out is what every good neonate does. If you want to go the anarch route, I really don't recommend it for inexperienced new players. I don't. It's a very tough row to hoe. I mean, it's tough to play an independent vampire under the best of circumstances, much less one in which you don't know any of the players and you don't quite know how things work yet. One of the key features of the entire Vampire the Masquerade game is that everyone is beholden to everyone else, or someone else, somewhere. The elders have to deal with even more than the neonates do. So get involved. Approach a more established character. Try to get on in their circle. We don't just have a bunch of social events happening here. We have a plot. We have people moving against each other. Hell, approach somebody not in your clan. Offer to be a mole. See what you can get out of that. And then approach your own clan and say, I'm a mole for this person. What do you want to defeat him? Or don't, but do something. Get involved by engaging people and giving them a worthwhile reason for dealing with you. And it's not that hard. On a far more practical level, I really do suggest that you pay attention to your spellings and grammar. It's really hard to roleplay with someone who is hard to communicate with. We're not saying that you should be 100% textbook English paper accurate, but man, it is a huge impediment to roleplay if you don't have decent grammar and spelling. On top of that, make sure that you post regularly and it's not 1,000 minutes between posts. In other words, make yourself easy to RP with. I've seen a lot of people get ostracized or get separated from the game because they didn't make it easy to roleplay with them, and there's nothing I can do about that. I understand sometimes it's tough, but I also understand people come here to have fun, and if you make it a chore to roleplay with you, they don't want to. So don't do that. Okay, now it's time for me to pick on all you old fogies. You know all that stuff I just said about getting involved with people's established characters and approaching them and all that? Don't make me look like an idiot. When someone approaches you and they're not the most polished person, give them a chance. Get them involved. Come up with something to do. Especially people playing ancilli who've been given ancilli specifically for stuff like this. Who knows, you might not need a mole in the Ventru just because you happen to be allies with them at the moment, but it couldn't hurt. It couldn't. What do you have to lose? And also you have a brand new player and you get them involved and you make a friend. So don't be too exclusive. Get people involved. Should you reveal to them your entire web of conspiracy? Absolutely not. No vampire would. But he would make that person the tool, and he would get involved with them. Also, just in general, socially, engage people. Don't be exclusive. Don't be elitist. Don't discount people just because you know them. And occasionally, play with someone new instead of playing with someone you played with 1,000 times before. I know it's tempting, but give other people a chance. Remember, every single person you're addicted to playing with now, you played with for the first time at least once. I guess exactly once, actually. When it comes to being receptive for new players, what this really comes down to is respect for the game. All of you play here for free. Many of you have served as staff, but really a lot of you have played here for years for free. And the one big way you can contribute to the game and give back a little bit is by being inclusive to new players and helping us out and helping the game grow and still be alive. Because without new people, this game would not be here. So that's the biggest thing, is that including new people and going out of your way to help out newbies is the best way you can show respect and gratitude for the game that we have provided all these years for you. And I'd like to see it. Many people have done that. Many people have tried to do that. And it's really the best thing you can do as an old player to give back a little for the years of entertainment and companionship and friendship that the game has provided for you. Oh. This is my audience for all my videos, by the way. He sits in the basket right behind the camera. But occasionally he needs some love. I don't know if he's ever been on a video before, but this is Logan. He's fantastic and beautiful, but he's a bit of a punk, just like me. Mr. Poe is kind of Steph's cat, but he's mine. Black is beautiful. And he's done. It really depends on what you mean by romance. Romance as a field of literature, vampire is explicitly part of, undoubtedly. It involves emotion and tragedy and love's lost and feelings and emotions. If you use the definition of romance, that includes books like The Count of Monte Cristo and all those sorts of things, yes, it is a romance setting. But when you start talking about it in the modern sense, then you get into a dicey situation. When we're talking about the modern sense of romance, what we're talking about is love and sex. And vampire is supposed to have a very tragic tone and is very particular about the form love takes in it. It should be tragic, unrequited, obsessive, dangerous. It should not be nice. It should be about how you can't experience love. You can't consummate it. You can't experience that closeness with someone anymore. Yet you desire and hunger for it. And so you can have tales about love, but they can't be normal stories about love. But then we get into sex. Sex just really shouldn't happen. Vampires, the closest thing they have to sex in the books is feeding off of one another. Though they're capable of doing so, they derive absolutely no enjoyment from it. The only time a vampire should be having sex is if he is using it to feed, and even then he probably won't consummate it because it uses blood. What he'll do is he'll seduce somebody and then bite them, or if they're doing it to a ghoul, and then it's solely for the ghoul's benefit. Even then, I'd rather not see the scenes in this game. Sex is a problem in most online vampire games. They easily degenerate into cyber sex havens for people who happen to have a vampire fetish. And that's a problem, and that's something I never want to see Sanguinus become. So we're tolerant of characters engaging with one another, but that's not how it should be. You can be close, you can try to recover some of that romance, but it should be empty. The closest thing you should have is feeding off of each other, and that carries its own dangers. So that's my position on sex in the game, is that I watch it very carefully, no pun intended, but I don't want to see it, and it shouldn't be like that. There's a difference, however, between sex and romance and characters being close. Characters can be close and try to find some brief respite from eternities of loneliness and predation, but it should be dark. It should have this undertone of desperation. It should have tragedy built into it, if you really want to pass muster with me. To be honest, I wouldn't, but if I had the inkling to do so, it might be fun to run a Sabbat game in Mexico. It might be fun to run a game in Europe, which is really the homeland of Vampire. Something in one of the cities which has seen a lot of history, like Prague or Berlin or somewhere in Austria, perhaps one of the Italian cities, or a fictional one. But in reality, it's very tough to run a non-US game. It would be a little bit easier to run an English game, but I don't know the culture, and most other countries' culture is not as much spread around. United States culture, for good or for ill, has pretty much reached every corner of the world. Everyone watches US movies. They at least have some sense of how America works. And we're an English-speaking server. So I am very sensitive to not getting things right and disrespecting people's culture and heritage and country by not getting things right and not being able to depict where they are. One thing I really want to do is run anything in Asia, because it's made very clear in the works, even before they came out with the Quiet Gen, that Asia is not a place where vampires have much hold over. And to be honest, one of the things there is about Vampire the Masquerade is that it is steeped in European mythology and only European mythology. It follows a European model. A little bit of the Middle East, a little bit, but it's a Western European game. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't feel the need to apologize for that like some people might. But it really feels out of place if you try to transfer it anywhere but that. And it's also very American. And most of the treatments that White Wolf gives of foreigners are very limited and show a lot of ignorance and a lot of being white suburban Georgians. I mean, really, the research in them are pitiful. And there's a lot of disrespect to people's cultures in that. And yeah, just don't even get me started on World of Darkness gypsies or the depiction of Mexico or the depiction of pretty much anything other than being white Americans. I think I could do better, but on the other hand, it's a very European game and it's a very white game. It's kind of funny for me to even envision a far future version of Vampire. It's such a millennial game. I mean, it's steeped in the 90s, which, there's nothing wrong with that. It's hard to even consider a version of Vampire that doesn't need to be toned down for today. So a far future version, I guess what it would be is information technology expanded and expanded. It would be less about existing in a world of darkness and despair, but a future vampire would be about remaining a creature of darkness and mystery in a world of ever-increasing knowledge and light, and what it takes to do that. More than anything, that's what it would start being about. As far as lasers and spaceships and that sort of thing, I mean, I've seen cyberpunk vampire games, and it kind of works because they share some common themes about despair and darkness and hiddenness and the underworld of society. So those sometimes work. I could see that working. I really could not see a space opera version of Vampire there, because there's just too many themes to work with, and you're mixing things that really shouldn't be mixed. It's what I call it's the robot ninja paradox, because robots are really, really awesome and ninjas are really, really awesome, but whenever robot ninjas show up, they suck. So don't try to do too much at once, and a sci-fi vampire setting would be trying to do way too much at once. Try Toughest Sect. It's really hard to play a successful Anarch. They're cool when they work, but they're outgunned, outmanned, outmaneuvered, and you have to have a lot of players agree to play them at once to even get play going, and even then you're making your own trouble a lot. I mean, the only times I've seen Anarchs work is that just by coincidence in another game I played in, people got tired of playing with the Camarilla hierarchy, so there was kind of a mass exodus of really good players. Even then it fell apart. So yeah, Anarchs are a tough road, man. You're either the only one, or you gotta play with a very small group of people a lot. Man.